Excuse the appearance today, guys. I can't even see if I'm in focus. Okay. I actually got my makeup done this morning, and it's like very extreme makeup, and I just still haven't taken it off, and I was like, I might as well just film, and now I'm like looking at myself in the viewfinder, and I'm looking a little crazy. So, hey everyone, it's me again, Brittany, and I'm here today to do my August wrap up. I believe I completed 14 books this month. Let's count them. 13 and a half. So that's insane. This has been a fantastic reading month. Definitely mostly because of Booktubeathon, but I'm still very impressed, and I read amazing books this month. I don't want this video to be insanely long, so I'm just gonna get into it. The first book that I completed this month was Air of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. I was doing this for my reread. This also completed the challenge of a book with green on the cover for Booktubeathon. I loved it. I have rediscovered that this is actually probably my favorite book in the entire series. It was just so amazing. The struggles that we see Selena going through in this book seem so realistic, and I love being introduced to the new characters that we find in this book, and this was definitely a character-driven book in the whole series. It isn't nearly as plot-driven as the others, so maybe that's why I liked it so much. I don't know, I normally like plot, but this one, it was just so fantastic. I loved seeing our characters just come to terms with things and move past things, and it was just so incredible, and it resonated so much with me, and I loved it so much. 5 out of 5 stars, 100%. After that, I completed Warm Bodies by Isaac Marriott. I actually listened to this book on audiobook. I gave it, I believe, 4 out of 5 stars, and I then watched the movie adaptation that completed that challenge, the read a book and then watch the movie adaptation. I did really enjoy it. I just didn't expect it to be the way it was. I had seen the movie already, and I think I expected it to be a lot more like the movie, which was dumb of me, I know. Just was a very different character than what I expected him to be. He was very philosophical, he had a lot of ideas, and I just hadn't been prepared for that kind of a plot line. That being said, it was still really amazing, and I did really like it. I'm not exactly sure if I like the reasoning behind people becoming zombies in this story. I understand it. I totally get what they were doing with it and where they were going with it, but personally I've always really liked the more scientific explanations, like, oh, there's a virus in this part of your brain and that's why you're being crazy and stuff like that. I've always really enjoyed that, while this one definitely took a more philosophical term of it. So yeah, it was still really fantastic. I do recommend it if you have watched the movie and you did like the movie, but don't go into it thinking that it's gonna be as funny or as lighthearted as the movie, because it definitely wasn't. Then I read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I can't even remember what challenge this one completed anymore. I'm sorry. If you watch my Booktubeathon vlogs, I talk about all the challenges and what each book finishes. I actually ended up enjoying this way more than I thought I would. I do have to say though, I had to put aside the fact that this story was the relationship in it was so bad. The dynamics of it all was terrible. Like, it was just so destructive and not at all how a relationship should be. But once I decided to look past that so that I could try to enjoy my time reading this book, I actually did have a pretty good time. It was just like one of those very guilty pleasure reads, and I had a good time. I liked the ending a lot, actually. I think that if the ending had been anything different, or if they hadn't given me as much as they did, I would have given this like maybe a 2.5 stars. I know, the ending did that much for me. So yeah, definitely an awful depiction of a relationship, definitely problematic, and not the best writing, but if you want a guilty pleasure read that you can look past all the awful problems, this is probably good for you. Oh, Ugly Love was Let a Coin Toss Decide Your First Read. Then I read Traffic by Ellen Hopkins for the challenge Wear a Hat While Reading a Book the entire time, and I did really enjoy this. I didn't like it as much as maybe her previous books. I've actually read almost all of her books, I believe, and this one, I did like it just because there's a lot of character development. We do see our characters after they've had an awful time and kind of them trying to come back from it, which is definitely a good storyline. I just feel like she writes the problems better than she writes the coming back from it. It was just kind of frustrating at times, and I found some of the characters pretty boring, but it was still fantastically written, and it was very it made me feel really good at the end just because the characters did get to wherever they, or I don't know, it's not that they got wherever they needed to go, but they all were kind of like seeming that they were on the right path in the end, for the most part. So yeah, this one is actually the sequel, I believe, to Tricks, and it follows 5 different characters. It follows Seth, Whitney, Ginger, Cody, and Ginger. So they just, it was really good. I think I preferred Tricks, and I could have probably done without this one, but it did leave you with a lot of those good feelings. I gave that 3 out of 5 stars. I don't know if I mentioned it. After that, I read Every Heart a Doorway by Sheena McGuire. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It was absolutely fantastic. I don't know what took me so long to pick up this book series, and it was just so cute and whimsical, and the writing is gorgeous, and there's just such good ideas throughout the whole thing, and I loved it so much. This was for the challenge, read 7 books, and I highly recommend it if you haven't picked up this series yet and you like fantasy elements in your stories. These are just so great. All the characters have such well thought out personalities, and the worlds are so interesting. Like just the whole idea of this, the premise of this book is so fantastic, and the writing is so good, and I just had a great time. There's just so many quotable lines. It's just so beautiful. I don't know, it made me feel really good, and it felt so nice reading it. So I highly recommend this series. Plus it's so short. You can finish this in like one sitting, and it doesn't feel like anything's missing, which is really cool, because you would think like being this short I would end up feeling like, oh, I wanted to see more of this story, more of that story, and I really didn't feel that way in the end. Maybe it's because I did know that Jack and Jill's story is going to be progressed or talked more about in the next book, but I just didn't really feel like I needed more. I knew that eventually they would be gotten to, and that in this story, the way that this story was told, it was everything that you needed in such a short amount of space, and I loved it. It was so great. Then I read Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller, and I read this book for, what did I read this for? I think it's like the read something about what you want to be when you grow up or something, and I wanted to be a pirate. I actually really enjoyed this. It was very entertaining. It wasn't the best writing of all time, but it was just so much fun to read. I've never read like a pirate ship or even just an ocean traveling sort of book, and I had a great time. I really loved our main character. I loved how she thought, and it was just really cool overall, the concept and the plot. It was cute. I did enjoy it so much. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah, if you haven't picked this up and you're into a fun summery read, I would do it. And lastly, for Booktubeathon, I read God's Grave by J. Kristoff, and this one completed the challenge of read a book with a beautiful spine. I didn't read this copy, I read the UK copy, but the UK copy sits so nicely on my bookshelf that I figured I'd grab this one. So, guys, I just had so many feelings. Nevernight is just such a fantastic series, trilogy, and it's just so good, and I love Mia Corvair, and I love her little Eclipse and Mr. Kindly, and I just love the plot. I love what drives her. I love the magic in this book, and everything about it is so good, and the plot twists are so shocking, and God, you're on the edge of your seat the entire time you're reading this, and I just don't even know how J. Kristoff can think of that many amazing things, and he keeps one-upping himself, and I'm so excited for the last book. I know it doesn't come out this year anymore, but like next year I'm waiting. It's okay, I can wait. Barely. But I just loved it so much. I was kind of worried in the beginning that I wasn't gonna like this one as much as Nevernight, because the beginning's pretty slow. I loved it more. It was better. I mean, I don't know, they're actually pretty even in my head. But I did really like how this one left off, because wow, J. Kristoff, don't kill me like that. I don't understand why you did that to me, but it's okay. So yeah, and if you weren't aware, Nevernight is actually about an assassin in training called Mia Corvair, and she tries to go to this school for assassins to learn how to become an assassin, and it just kind of follows her story and why she wants to become one and who she's really after, and she also has this secret dark power that kind of sets her apart from everyone else, and she's trying to learn how to deal with it because there's no real information on how to. I love how this is the first book that I gave kind of a summary for. Yeah, the rest I'm gonna try to summarize for you, don't worry. After finishing God's Grave and finishing all 7 challenges of Booktubeathon, I picked up Pullin Sun by Pierce Brown, and oh my God, guys, I don't know what took me so long to pick this back up because I loved Red Rising when I read it, and it was just so good. This one was better than Red Rising. There's just so many plot twists throughout this entire story, ones that you just don't see coming. I was screaming basically the whole time. I half read this, half listened to it on audiobook, and I really love the audiobook. I would highly recommend it if for whatever reason you can't get into the story. Listen to the audiobook. I think that the way the narrator speaks just gave me so much clarity on how the different colors speak to each other. It was... So basically, this series takes place in a futuristic world, so it's a sci-fi series, and it's mostly in Mars. And we follow Darrow, who is a red in the beginning of the story, and the reds are the lowest of the low colors. Everyone is color-coded, and you're born into your color and you die in your color, and that's how it is. And reds are at the very, very bottom, while golds are at the very top, and they're the ones that lead society. They're the rulers. They are overall better. Their bodies are made better. Their brains are made better. Everything about them is actually improved from every other color, and reds are the worst. So Darrow starts off as a red, and we kind of follow his journey after his wife is killed and how he wants to get revenge and kind of even out the playing field and make it so that there isn't such a class system anymore. And it's just so interesting. There's so many great ideas throughout this entire series. It's just so philosophical and it's so poignant and has such great thoughts, and I just love it so much. It's definitely one of my all-time favorite series, and I'm only on the 2nd book, so I cannot wait to get to Morningstar. And also I'm very nervous too because the way that this book ended destroyed me, and I have no idea how we can go from there. I have no clue. It's just... yeah, so if you like a book that has just great discussions on humanity and also is going to plunge its fist into your heart, rip it out, and then smash it on the ground, then you're gonna love this. Also, it's kind of gory, so. Then I read Fairy Tale Volume 2 by Hiro Mishima. I had a great time reading this. I actually liked it more than the first one, which is kind of what I expected. I read another one of his series, and in that one, being how it's kind of like a high fantasy sort of world, it takes a while to get into the actual story, and it's mostly just introducing you to the characters in the first few books, and then it starts to get more and more and more, and it builds upon itself, and it's fantastic because there's only so much room in a manga. So I did actually really like this one, though. I think it's already picking up way more than his previous series, and this is only the 2nd volume, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It's kind of hard to explain the plot, so just know that it's like high fantasy, sort of, and it's a world where there's guilds of wizards, and this one specifically follows these people in the Fairy Tale Guild, which is like the best guild in the whole place. After that, I read A Study in Charlotte. I listened to actually A Study in Charlotte in audiobook. I loved it so much, guys. Okay, so this book is it follows Jamie Watson and Charlotte Holmes, who are descendants of the original Watson and Sherlock Holmes. So it's just so great. It starts with Jamie starting at this new school, and it's a school that Charlotte Holmes actually happens to go to, and he really wants to meet her because he grew up on the Sherlock and Watson stories, and he just always kind of felt a connection to her from afar, and he didn't know a lot about her, but he knew that she'd had some problems, but he hadn't ever really like researched it. I don't know, that's going way too far into it. But basically, they're not like fast friends at all, but suddenly they get accused for murder, well, framed for murder, and they have to go all Watson and Holmes and figure it out, and it's just so good. It was so good. I loved Charlotte and Watson. I think that they had such great personalities. I think that they were so realistic, and I was kind of worried because this is a young adult. I thought it would just be very light and fluffy and kind of just like, I don't know, but it deals with some very serious topics in this, such as drug abuse and sexual assault, so just know that. And I just think that the characters are so well-rounded, and Like, they're exactly what you think they would be, and they're not. And it's just such a good balance of both of them, and I think the humor in this is so well done. I love the writing. I love the voices, because you can hear their voice. I mean, I heard them because I was listening to them on audiobook. But you can really just tell the different voices, just how they speak is so different, and it's just... Yes, I highly recommend this. You should read it. You should read it. After that, I read Down Among... Oh, I gave that 5 out of 5 stars, if I didn't mention that. After that, though, I read Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna Maguire, I'm really not sure. And I loved it even more than Every Heart a Doorway. It was just so good. This one follows Jack and Jill, and it is a prequel to Every Heart a Doorway. It is their story before they end up at that school for troubled children, school for wayward children, and it just follows them growing up, like why they are the way they are, why their door opened, because in this world, doors only open to you for specific reasons. You have to have the right personality for this door to open for you to walk into this world and fit in, and it really goes into depth of why these characters are the way they are, and I loved it so much. I think there were such great discussions in the very beginning about parenting, and it was just so good, and it was so magical, and it was still so whimsical even though it was dark and dreary, because Jack and Jill's world is dark, and it's so it's just so good, and I loved it so much. It has such a special place in my heart right now, and there was just so many cool things. There was pictures throughout it, not throughout it, but there's like 3 pictures, and that was really like a nice addition, so yeah. After that, I finished... You can't see that. Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th/4th book in 4th because like it's the 4th book, but 5th if you include Assassin's Blade. In the Throne of Glass series, I had a great time. I was kind of worried in the beginning. It was just not my cup of tea at first. It was kind of has a slow start. And then the last, like, even like throughout the middle, I'm like, okay, I'm getting it again and I'm really loving it, but I don't even know why I used to think this was my favorite. And then I got down to the last like 150 pages and it destroyed me. I was holding back tears the entire time. It's just, but it was just so well done, and I love how this story ends, and I love like everything that the characters are going through in the end, and I just think that it was very well done, and I love how our characters start to meet, like the ones that got our new storyline in Heir of Fire. I think that part's really cool. I just have so much to talk about, and I am going to be making my book talk on this, so look out for that next week because I have so many thoughts, so I'm not really going to touch on it right now. Just know that I can't really describe this book because it is really far into the series, but if you've probably heard about Throne of Glass, especially if you're on my channel. And the last book that I finished this month was The Last of August by Brittany Cavallaro. I did not expect to pick this one up, and I just saw it on Scribd, and I listened to the audiobook because I loved the first one so much, and I loved the second one just as much. It was so good. 5 out of 5 stars. It was so fantastic. I love Charlotte and Watson, and I love their relationship, and I love how they help each other, and I love the friendship, and just everything about it is so great, and the mysteries are so cute, and I mean they're not cute, but like it's just, and the ending, whoo guys, this did not leave me with like happy feelings in the ending. This one was the kind of book where it's like, watch out for the next one because we just destroyed you. So I definitely have to pick up the 3rd book because wow, just wow. It was so good. And this one again follows Jamie and Watson, but they are in Europe for this whole story, so that's pretty cool, and it's following the events right after the ending of A Study in Charlotte. So, and then that's the last book I finished, but I got halfway through A Darker Shade of Magic, and I really wanted to finish this book this month, but I got very busy yesterday and just wasn't able to. But I read a good chunk of it yesterday, about 200 pages, which is super cool, and I'm loving it so much. I know I kind of mentioned that I was a little worried about it because I'd been hearing some mixed reviews, but I definitely wanted to read it anyways because first of all, I own them all, and second of all, Common Spence over at Common Spence is hosting a read-along for the whole series throughout the months of August, September, and October, and I just definitely wanted to participate in that, and I'm loving it. I'm really, really liking it. I'm already tapping it up so much. It's just so good, especially if you're just a fantasy lover. I would definitely say this leans way more towards high fantasy than urban, because even though it takes place in London, it's just, there's a lot, it's just very different, you know? I mean, it is technically urban, I guess, but it feels way more high fantasy. So I'm just really enjoying the characters so far that we've been introduced to, and I can't wait to finish it. I'm really trying to finish it today, so I'll let you know how that goes. But yeah, that's all the books I read this month. It's a large amount of books, and I'm really, really proud of myself. I'm probably not gonna be able to finish this many books in a month again for the rest of the year, but let's have high hopes. So that's gonna be it for my video today. Let me know how many books you guys finished this month and what were your favorites, because I just had so many great books. Like almost all of them were 4 or 5 stars, so that's incredible. And yeah, I post videos Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays most of the time, and I will see you in my next one. Bye! Guys, this makeup is so throwing me off. I wanted to look at the viewfinder so bad, like I'm doing right now, because I just look so different than normal, but I kept my eyes focused. I hope you appreciate that.